Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. And today, I'm ripping the guts out of this thing because I'm sick and tired of dealing with it. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. Do me a favor, look down there, find that thumbs up button, give us a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also be sure to click on the bell icon so that you get notifications. Let's get started. The next step in installing the lift is to hook up power to the motor for the hydraulic pump. And this has been an incredibly frustrating nightmare for the last couple of days, mainly because this connection box where the relay lives is so incredibly small and, well, cheap. I mean, it is unbelievably thin metal. It has knockouts in the side where you're supposed to knock it out and put in your connections to hold your wires. The problem is that the knockouts are not properly cut. They're just kind of indented. They're not almost broken off. The way the knockouts are supposed to be is that the metal is sheared off, leaving just two little tiny tabs holding it in place. This is just kind of indented, and I actually had to go around with a drill and drill out holes to get a hole in the side of this thing. And in the process, because the metal is so cheap and thin, I ended up just bending the crap out of the side of this. So I finally said, forget it, because once I got the holes in the side and started trying to actually wire up the relay that's in there, this is ridiculously small and tight. You're trying to maneuver 10 gauge wire, because this is a 30 amp circuit. So 10 gauge braided wire is not thin stuff. It's pretty stiff. And trying to maneuver it, it's just a royal pain in the butt. So finally, after a lot of frustration, I said, forget it. I am not doing this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the relay from the box, and I'm going to put the relay down in another good sized box that make it easy to work on, and then take and route all the wires down into that box along with routing power into it so that I don't have to deal and fight with this. Let's do it. So what I did was I went and got an 8-inch by 8-inch by 6-inch deep junction box, and this has a cover on it. I'm going to mount it on a column here right below the emergency cutoff switch. So power is going to come into the cutoff switch, and then I'm going to route the power lines down into the junction box. And this is going to mount right here. And then from here, I'm going to use a flex conduit to connect it up to the electrical box on the motor. And through that flex conduit is going to run the power lines and the ground line for the motor, as well as the control lines for the switch. And I presume that's the way I'm going to also route the wires for the safety switch on the safety bar up top. So let's measure off, find the center line of the column to get ourselves a starting point. Really should be wearing safety goggles here. I've got chips flying around. Use a sheet metal screw. Just drill it slightly larger than the size of the screw. Or, yeah, about the same size as the shaft of the screw, maybe slightly larger, and then the threads of the screw can bite in and basically thread themselves into this mild, I presume this is mild steel, whatever it is. One of the best things I ever bought was one of these little sets of drill bits, and it's finely graded. It's like by 60/4 and then by 32nds, and it's a bunch of, like there's probably a dozen 1/8 inch bits, but this lets you really finely tune what size hole you're drilling, and there's a bunch of them. They're not that expensive. I'm not sure where I got these. I'll try and figure that out and give you a link. I pre-drilled the junction box on the drill press so that I could precisely place the holes, then ran the screw in there and overdrove it so that it stripped it out and so it can freely turn. Then I can put it all the way through, get the drill on it, maybe eventually. And then line it up into the hole. It's kind of a tough part. There we go. Now, this is part of what I love about this Festool drill. Just pop off one chuck, put on the Jacobs chuck for drilling. Let's see. I'm going to take and get this thing, eyeball it, use the other drill the other hole I've already drilled as a guide. Now I need to go drill the holes into the junction box itself so that I could run the conduit. Drilling large holes can be challenging, and if we're working with soft materials like plastic or wood, the very best thing I find to do it is a Forstner bit. It's really stable, and a set of inexpensive ones is, well, inexpensive. I have a set that I've used for quite a while. I'm not sure where I might have gotten them from Grizzly. I'm not sure. I'll check on that and give you a link below. Trying to get the right position, for me, the easiest way is to make a mark in the material, and then, like a little dimple, and then get the tip of the Forstner bit in there, and then lower it down. You got some hot plastic coming off of there. Perfect. So this is where the power is going to come in the top, and then I need to drill 2 more holes in the side for the control, the limit switch wire to come in one, and the power and ground lines and the switch lines coming in from the electrical box into the other. There. Nice and pretty. Okay, so you saw how incredibly mangled up the box on the motor was when just trying to pop open one of the holes. This is how a box is supposed to work. That's it. It just pops open. And you're done. How much to cut off? And dealing with conduit or like PVC pipe, one of the best tools you can get is one of these ratcheting cutters, because it just makes such short work of cutting things. Even heavy, like braided electrical wire, this will just slice right through that stuff. It's great. Okay, so after thinking it over, I decided I don't want to go through all the trouble of wiring up the relay or the contactor, then only to discover that things aren't working right, and now I don't know whether it's my wiring or if it's the contactor or what. So I decided I'm going to run a test first. I went ahead and hardwired the motor into the emergency cutoff. So now, when I hit this and give it power, the motor should spin up, and I'm just going to do that for a second. And then if that's all looking good, I'm going to go ahead and fill it with hydraulic fluid and try running a test with it set up like this, just to make sure that all this mechanically is working before I try to worry about getting the electrical wired up. And then if there's a problem, it won't start. I know the problem is not in the motor or whatever, it's in my wiring. So let's give it a try. I'm just going to bump it for a second, see if the motor spins up. Okay, good, good. We have life in the motor when we give it power. So now let's put the arms on to give it some weight on the carriages, or a little more weight. The carriages are pretty heavy the way they are. But let's just put the arms on, give it some more weight, because from what I understand, if you run the carriages up with no weight on them, no car on them, then it takes a really long time for them to come back down. And I'll go ahead and put the arms on the carriages to speed that process up a little bit. So let's see how that works out. Ugh, these arms are so heavy. Okay, these pins go in, and then there are snap rings that go on the bottom side. I'm just gonna leave the snap rings off for now until I can lift this thing up and get at them a little easier. Okay, one thing to watch out for is when you're gonna pick it up, don't just grab the pad, because the pad comes right off. Okay, so the top one's in. Now the weight is sagging the thing down, so I need to pick this up here. There, okay, and wiggle that in place. All right, one down. Oh, geez, did I mention these things are heavy? All right, that one right in. Okay, that's good. Okay, they're swinging cleanly. They're not hitting the floor. I've seen some people comment that once they got everything installed, the arms were dragging on the ground because they hadn't gotten the column properly straight. But it looks like we're okay on that. These here are the locking mechanisms. When you lift it, let me give you a better view of that. These are pushed up by pins underneath here, so that when it comes onto the ground, they're pushed up and the arm is free to swing. Once you get it in position and you start lifting it up, these teeth, or this toothed block, drops in and meshes with the gear here and locks it in place so that this can't swing at all when the thing is up in the air. So now it's time to pour the hydraulic fluid into the tank. And it says, according to the directions, it takes 3 to 5 gallons. Really? 3 to 5? You couldn't get any more precise than that? I mean, we're talking, you know, it might be 3 gallons, or it might be 67% more. I don't know. So I went ahead, as long as I bought 5 gallons. I don't know. As I mentioned before, the handle hangs down here like right next to the opening, completely in the way. So I used a bungee cord to hold it up out of the way here. And I thought, okay, well, at least there's a good size opening to pour the hydraulic fluid in. Wrong. The cap is pretty big. The actual hole is really, really small. This is going to take forever, so I'm not going to bother videoing it because it would bore you to death. On a side note, why are there safety seals on hydraulic fluid or motor oil? Is somebody really going to poison your hydraulic fluid or motor oil? Okay, that turned out to be not so bad. We ended up putting in about 3 gallons. The AW32 oil that they recommend is really fairly thin. It's kind of like cooking oil. So it wasn't bad to sit there and pour it in 1 gallon at a time through the little tiny funnel. So let's give it a try and see what happens. Well, unfortunately, the camera didn't start recording like it was supposed to when we did our initial test, but it actually did work. Now, it was a little scary at first because the pump started spinning and you could hear it working, but the arms weren't moving at all. And I started thinking, oh no, something is seriously wrong. But apparently what it was doing was it was, I guess, somehow auto-bleeding the lines, and it took a while for the hydraulic fluid to make it through all the way to the rams, because after maybe 10 seconds, although it felt a lot longer, the arms began to come up. And okay, I think we're good. I'm sure the camera's recording this time, so let's just give this another try and see if it all still keeps working. Well, all right, there they go. Oh, okay, that was the auto locks kicking in. Whew, that was scary. Didn't know what that was. I thought something was breaking. Okay, and now let's lower it down. Since it's got no real weight on it, it takes a long time. Okay, there, it just settled down onto the locks. Awesome. All right, so let's use the switch to lift it back up a little bit. Disengage the locks and press the release lever. And yeah, with no weight on it, this is really slow. Okay, cool. We seem to have an actual functioning lift. Just the, okay, you can see there the arm is locked. When it comes all the way down, it will be unlocked. Very cool. Yep. All right. Okay, guys, I am like super excited now because even with all the troubles and trials and tribulations with this lift, wow, it is actually working. So I'm super happy about that, and I think that's I'm going to call it for now on this episode. Next time we'll get into actually wiring up the electrical for real and maybe taking this thing for a test spin. All right, so again, please go find that thumbs up button, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you turn on notifications so that you get notified every time I post new content here in Cliff's Garage. We'll see you next time.